What's up, everybody? We are back with ATS College Football Edition podcast. How's everybody doing today? We got Beej and Rich with me.
Straight out of
Good.
work, we're ready to go.
Yeah, we're doing it a little bit different today. Had some technical difficulties last night. So we are here today, midday for you guys. So you guys get this right after work, which will be nice. As we always do, we do our first segment of the day, which is Woes of the Week. Truthfully, I don't really have a lot to go off of from last week of exactly woes. Just because I felt like the games kind of went like how I thought they were going to go. I guess you could put Missouri in there, not even really putting up a fight against Bama. 34-0. Bama just kind of dominated slowly and methodically. Um,
Murder ball,
game
baby.
was, I mean, the game was never in doubt at all. Um, Somehow the 34-0 win, in my opinion, really wasn't as dominant as it could have looked. Because I think they could have scored a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
left
The
they left
first.
some stuff on the field for sure. So, but Missouri's definitely in there for that. There was a couple closer games this week. I mean, nothing we really you know, we care about too
Texas
much.
should have got
No,
beat.
I was gonna say.
Can
I
we
was
be
gonna say
honest?
Texas.
Oh
Texas
Texas.
yeah,
should have
yeah, yeah.
lost that
Texas.
fucking game.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing about the Texas game. Like, I've said this that like this year, Texas gave Vandy every chance to win that game. Vandy
Yes.
had probably four chances to really go and win that game, and they punted, turnover on downs, punted. So they really could not. They just couldn't get past that Texas defensive line a lot of the times, and Texas had a pretty good scheme for them defensively. I will say this about Texas's offense, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Rich. When we were going to that Georgia game, we were talking about how they haven't been rushing the ball as well in the SEC play. And then Georgia held them to what they held them to, which was pretty much nothing, like 20 something yards. And then they go into this last game with Vanderbilt and they couldn't run the ball in Vanderbilt. So their team is
Pretty
like
flawed.
a zone spread, zone wide team, right? So what they
Yeah.
want to do is run the ball and then throw the ball over top of you, um, and create mismatches. They can't do that because DBs are playing 10 yards off of their receivers because they're not scared of the pass. So your
Yeah.
safeties and your DBs can sit back. They don't have to come up into the box. And when you can control it with just your front seven, your team's not going to be able to run the ball, or throw the ball for that matter.
Yeah. I think just to add on to that, I think it's gonna be pretty scary for Texas with all this offensive line trouble because I mean obviously we know what Georgia did against them, like 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. I mean Vandy against Texas offensive line had 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. So the Texas has Texas A&M at the end of the season, and that's one of the best defensive line in the country. So it's
And
gonna
add on
be
and to add on to that, Quinn Ewers seems like he takes a lot of time to get into a game,
yeah,
right? Like it's
yeah,
not in the first quarter. It's normally like almost into the second quarter to where he
yeah.
seems
well,
like he's
yeah,
really
that's
fully
I mean,
playing.
yeah, Vandy gave him the ball 3 times. They had 2 interceptions and a fumble, and Texas is still only winning this game by 3 points. Like,
yeah.
that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with Texas right now, and we talked about it previously. Is when coming into that Georgia game, um, they were having trouble with taking advantage of those kind of things, and their offensive line was dominating,
Yeah.
other people's defensive lines. But Georgia comes in there, same thing as they did to Bama, right? They gave a blueprint to some other teams on how to play Texas, and then they did the same thing with Bama, and you've seen Bama struggle since then. Are we going to see Texas struggle now because Georgia put out a blueprint on how to affect them?
Yep.
Now, you have to have good defensive line play and good linebacker eye discipline to play Texas and beat them. And Vandy's a very well coached team.
Yeah.
So it depends on who they play next, and who they play the rest of the season, and if anybody can take or get an advantage when it comes to Texas offensive line right now. Um, let's go into some of our stuff from last week, some of the games of the week that we had. Two of them really turned out to be kind of duds. We kind of knew that though about our third game. Our first two games we thought would be pretty good though. LSU and A&M, I think we were spot on with that being a really good game. It almost got out of control though,
Hmm.
um, until LSU turns the ball over three times in a row. Texas A&M goes up. They play Marcel Reed. So a lot of things transpired in that game. Right, our conversation before it was, hey, if LSU can protect Garrett Nussmeier, then I think LSU wins this game. And if they can hold that defensive lineup for Texas A&M. Our other talk was if Connor Wigman can exploit this LSU defensive backfield, then I think they'll be able to win the game too. Now, I think we got some skewed looks at Marcel Reed and Connor Wigman, which is why they both excelled in some of their last plays. But like Connor Wigman was not supposed to start against Missouri. He comes out there, he plays, he throws for like 300 yards, he dominates, right? They weren't expecting that. You go into this next game against LSU, and they know Wigman's going to play. So they prepared for Wigman, and they had a great game plan for Wigman. My confusion, or this is where I get confused, is why did you not like prepare as a defensive analyst, right? Because I can't blame us on the defensive coordinator solely because he has so much going on. But as a defensive analyst, your sole job is to go, okay, what can happen in these situations if Wigman gets hurt? What are we doing to prepare for this next guy? He's got some running. We can do shit. Like there should have been game plan in there. Georgia game plan for Arch Manning, and that motherfucker came in for a first rounder. Okay, so if Georgia's doing it, which is a very well coached team, I know damn well LSU should be doing the same thing. Yeah. And that's where I have a problem with LSU in that game is how are you not preparing for this kid when you've seen what he can do? And he can throw the ball a little bit, yeah, but he's a running threat. So you have to play him differently than you're going to play Connor Wigman. And it took them about 3 or 4 possessions to even start to get to figure him out. And by that time, the game was over. So I just have a lot of trouble with this game with LSU and how Brian Kelly's been coaching his team up to this point. Because there's been games where you should win or you should dominate and you're struggling. And there's games like this where you could have been up, truthfully. They missed 3 field goals in this game, right?
Yeah, that's coaching too. That's horrendous coaching.
I mean, I don't even know if that's coaching on, but that's the thing though, right? Like your special teams coach should be on par. Your defensive analyst they should be having their shit together, and they don't. So it looks right now like you don't have control of your team because you're fucking up in every other aspect besides offense. And even on your offense, you're putting so much pressure on Garrett Nussmeier because you're making him throw 50 times a game, and you have no running. You have no running game at all.
Yeah, that's the stat I was going to pull up. I don't know. I mean, if you can necessarily relate this directly to coaching, because I don't know all about the X's and O's and stuff, but it's like, damn, you rushed the ball for 23 times for 24 yards. I mean, that's pretty
coaching. That's coaching.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the X's and O's.
And the problem is you have to really figure out is it an offensive line problem? Is it schematically? Is that the problem? Like, what is the problem to make it? If you're throwing 50 times a game, the run should be open a little bit because you're throwing so fucking much, which is why Georgia can run the ball sometimes when they want to because they throw so much. And it should be the same for LSU.
Yeah, Brian Kelly pointed that out. He was like, man, we have to help Garrett Nussmeier. Like, we can't expect him to throw the ball 50 times and win us these games. Because when you throw the ball 50 times, that ball's going up in the air.
You're bound to
going to cause a couple of interceptions. So, I mean, yeah, LSU's got to find a run game. I mean, clearly, it's like every team nowadays has this high-flying offense, but, like, it still all relies on the run. And establishing a run opens those plays up in the backfield. So, I mean, if they don't get that figured out, then they're going to struggle against Alabama as well because Alabama's got a pretty good defensive front. We can be susceptible to a run, but we also got good defensive backs that can cause some interceptions. So I don't know. It was definitely a horrible game for their rushing game, so they got to figure that out quick. But goes to show you how good that Texas A&M defensive front is.
Yeah, right. And I think it goes to show too. We were talking last week, like Nussmeier when he gets hot, like that. First half.
Yeah, the first half.
That was the best Garrett Nussmeier I've seen this season.
Yep.
And then he put so much pressure on him in the second half. It's like, well, fuck, we still have a lead and we're still throwing the ball because we can't run.
Well, we talked about that too, right?
And then he gets cold.
He needs to come in there and start off hot and not struggle in the first half, which he did. And he did that. Your team's supposed to be up 20 fucking something.
They left at least 9 or
like
10
7
points on the board. Yeah.
Okay, so you're supposed to be up that much. I'd feel comfortable as a quarterback being up that much, but when you miss those and you give momentum back to a team and they're away, like you're away at their stadium, you have to kill them quick. You cannot let them continue to stay into a game. So
Yeah, and then you have a lead and you're still throwing the ball.
Well,
Then
exactly. That's what sucks. You got a 17-7 lead, and you're like, all right, we're going into the
you
second half. Like, let's just run the ball, run the clock,
you
time of
can't,
possession here.
but you can't.
But if you can't get a yard per rush, then like shit, you gotta throw the ball.
But it's not like they can't run at all. Not even against like
No.
not great defensive lines.
Yeah.
Like this is a great defensive line, and you knew you probably weren't going to be able to run the ball well. So come up with shit. Like that's what blows my mind is like an offensive coordinator, how you're not coming in there scheming some shit up to be able to run the ball or at least give some sweeps or at least some screens that
especially
look
with the talent LSU has, there's no excuse.
Exactly. They have guys all over the field. Like I'd be using Lacey in the run game. Like, it's just there's a lot of shit that confuses me about that team because they are good, but if you can't run the ball and a team can make you one-dimensional, or you just make yourself one-dimensional by not being able to run the ball and only throw, like you can put 8 DBs in the backfield and just float. So that game turned out a little bit different than I expected. I thought LSU could win that game. I also did not really prepare for Marcel Reed, so maybe you can blame me as well. But
you were as prepared as their analysts.
Yeah, I expected LSU to be able to win that game if Connor Wigman played because I didn't think Connor Wigman was that great. I just thought he had a good game against Missouri, and Missouri's not that good. Now, I did not expect that other kid to come in, and truthfully, I think that Marcel. This is the last thing I'm going to say on this. I think that Marcel Reed needs to start the rest of the season.
Yep.
But you have lost the surprise factor on teams. So I can promise you now, not one team is going to prepare for only one quarterback. They're going to prepare for both. And also, I want to see how he plays from start to the end of a game, and how that game plan works out for them in a whole game. Because if they can do that shit consistently against everybody, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah,
because they already are a problem.
And I don't know. Elko might have to walk this tightrope of a 2-quarterback system because, would be like,
I think that's why Wigman started.
Yeah.
I think that's why Wigman started because they put so much money into him NIL wise to keep him to make him stay.
Yeah.
I think that's why he played him again. Honestly. And also he went out there and beat Missouri, and he's probably like, okay, well, shit, like I mean, he's playing well. Let's just ride him, and if we don't need to anymore, we'll put Reed in. We know Reed can do it. But kudos to him, really, for keeping both those guys on his roster. And because earlier in the offseason, it was like, okay, well, we don't really know who. He kept saying, I don't know who the starter is going to be. And everyone was like, dude, Connor Wigman's going to be the starter. Stop lying. You're just trying to keep these guys on your roster to maintain your roster. We didn't really know Marcel Reed was going to be this good. I mean, we knew Marcel Reed was good coming out of high school, but I didn't know he was going to be able to explode like this and look the way he does, because he looks very Lamar Jackson-esque the way he runs the ball so freely and loose. Like he doesn't look very stiff, which is crazy to see another quarterback come in the league and do that. Let's go to this next game, Navy and Notre Dame. Navy had a lot of chances in this game to keep this game close in the beginning of the game. And towards the end, Notre Dame just kind of broke their will and put it on them. But truthfully, Navy could have stayed in this game. They had a couple times where they were, they turned the ball over on the other side of the field or went for it on fourth down and didn't get it. And that was when the game was close. And you can't do that. And Notre Dame just took advantage of getting Navy's defense on the field a lot and keep them on the field. They just kept running it down their throat, kept making them and they just look gassed. Like Navy's defense looked gassed, and you don't expect a Navy or an Army team to be gassed ever. But if your team is constantly getting off the field from turnovers, I mean, they turned the ball over, or they had possibility of turning it over more than that too.
No, they had 6. Yeah, the 5 fumbles lost, 1 interception. They had 2 more fumbles that they recovered.
Exactly. So when you put the ball in harm's way 7 times or 8 times, dude, you're gonna lose the game. And it's not even gonna be close
by far.
Which is what the score indicates, right? That right there shows me. If you show me that score, I say Navy probably 1, their offense did not work, their passing game did not work. 2, their defense probably got ran out the building. And then 3, they probably turned the ball over a couple of times, either interceptions or fumbles. And that's exactly how this game turned out. I thought Navy would be a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah. I mean, if you were talking about that game had no idea about what happened, and I told you, yeah, Navy, the turnover battle, Navy lost 6-0, you'd be like, oh, so they got their ass beat.
Yeah.
Like that's all you'd have to say. I don't think you'd have to say more than that.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So,
That's my
so,
only note, actually. 5 turnovers, Navy couldn't generate offense.
Yeah.
That's the
I'm
whole
I
note.
well,
I'd love to see the win-loss record on a 6-0 turnover battle ratio.
Yeah.
oh, I mean, you
I bet
probably
it's
got two
0 in the win
wins.
column.
You maybe
But
got two.
yeah,
I'm giving somebody a bone, like
yeah,
somebody that's really good that just had a couple fuck ups. But
yeah.
even then, you really don't know. But let's go to this Oregon Illinois game. I don't want to talk about the other game too much. And even this game, I didn't really talk about it too much. Oregon put on a show against Illinois.
Clinic, yeah.
I thought it would be like this. I thought they'd cover. I thought 21.5 was a lot, but I still thought they'd cover that. Mainly because I think Oregon is hitting their stride right now offensively. After that, or before that Ohio State game, there was a lot of questions on if Oregon could come in and play and how they were going to do against better opponents. I think they've gotten their wits about them now, and they're all there. And you consistently are seeing that week by week now. It doesn't matter who they're playing, ranked team, non-ranked team, they're putting a lot of points on the board, and they are not allowing a lot of points. So that's my only points on that game. If you guys have anything else.
No, yeah, I mean, just short and sweet. Oregon's definitely firing on all cylinders. I mean, super efficient offense. I mean, what Dylan Gabriel freaking 18 for 26, 291 and 3 touchdowns. He did have an interception, but oh well. And then their rushing game, 39 rushes for 229 yards. Like super balanced offense, getting it done on all cylinders. Definitely to me right now, looking like the best team in the country.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I
At
mean,
least
we
one of
said
them.
last week
yeah.
Luke Altmaier had to be perfect, and he wasn't perfect. So, I mean, when you're
Yeah.
playing a superior opponent like Oregon, you're gonna have to do better than less than 50% completion rate. Didn't do it, so Oregon
Kudos
runs
to
away
Dan
with the
Lanning
game.
though. Their
Yeah,
defense is good,
Dan Lanning, yeah,
Yeah.
and his
Oregon's
scheme is his
might be
scheme is
for
just
real.
gross.
Gonna
They are
wait,
for real.
gonna
They're
wait to
for
jump
real.
on the Oregon train. They've
Yeah.
burnt us last season
They
Yeah, they
burnt us
did.
last season, but they also never looked this
They
good
burnt
last
us
season.
twice. They burnt us
twice
twice.
against Washington last season, both
Oh, we
times.
had them ranked top 4, even with Washington beating them, which was
In
Yeah.
crazy.
the Pac-12 championship, we had Oregon covering the 9.5 point
We said double
spread.
points,
Yeah.
We're like,
double digits, dog. We beating the shit out of them. All right, let's go. Let's go to next week or this week actually. Um, there's not a lot to talk about here. There's a couple games I want to just bring up, and we can just kind of fly by them. Georgia, Florida. Just bringing that up because it's a big rivalry game. I think Georgia has to take this team seriously though, because Florida has looked pretty decent in SEC play at least. So you have to respect this team, in my opinion. You can't just think you're going to go in there and, oh, it's a 4-3 team, we're going to smack them. Anything can happen in rivalry games, and specifically this Georgia Florida game always turns out to be harder than it needs to be for either team that's superior. So in this one, I think Georgia does pretty well. I don't know about the cover or anything like that. I think Georgia wins this game though. I think Trevor Etienne's really going to try to put on a clinic. I think we're going to put Trevor Etienne in positions to put on a clinic because he wants to do that against his old team. And I also think that we have to play like we played against Quinn Ewers. We have to get to DJ Lagway, because if we let him sit in that pocket and rip it, the kid's got a gun as an arm.
Yeah.
Okay, the kid can rip it. So that's the only thing I'm kind of nervous about is him being able to move in the pocket and get out of the pocket and extend some plays, because if you let a quarterback extend plays, they're obviously going to do that to you. So let's get a spy or two on there, get Jalen Walker, spy on this kid, and just go run him down. That's my analysis.
yeah. I mean, obviously huge rivalry game. Anything can happen in these kind of games, but I just think the moment's a little bit too big for DJ Lagway. I think he's really good. He's really talented, but he's young and he struggles in these big moments. If Georgia gets after him like they got it after Texas and Quinn Ewers, I mean, they're definitely screwed. But if they can create some protection and maybe hit a couple, deep balls early, shock Georgia a little bit, stun them in the first half, I think they can hang around and keep it close. I don't know if
Yeah.
they win, but if Georgia, has another typical lousy first half that they've had a couple times this year and keeps the team close. I think it could be close for a little while, but I think the fourth quarter it'll come down to Georgia just kind of taking over if that's the case. But you never know. Like we talked about last week, even though Georgia dominated Texas, we still have not seen a complete 4 quarters from this team.
which is super
And
scary that we haven't even seen their
yeah,
offense do well.
will
Yeah.
be very scary when we see that. So, and I mean, hey, in a big rivalry game like this, we know we've heard a couple of Kirby Smart's pregame and halftime speeches from this game. So probably get another one of those, and maybe this is finally the game they put all 4 quarters together.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
I
hates
thought
Florida, man. He hates
Yeah.
Florida.
I think if we're gonna see a Georgia run game, this is the week to see it. I think Florida's run defense is like bottom 50
Yeah.
in the entire FBS. So the potential is there. And if they get after Lagway, it's over. I mean,
Yep.
he's a
Yeah.
freshman. You hit him around a couple times. I think he's gonna start seeing some ghosts. Yeah, I don't really. Georgia needs to take them seriously though, because this is potentially a look ahead spot against Ole Miss. You got Ole Miss next week, and
Mhm.
Ole Miss is fighting for their lives. So Georgia just needs to take it one opponent at a time. And if they play like did against Texas, nobody in the country is beating them. So
Yep.
that's
Dude, if their defense just plays like that, their offense doesn't even need to do much if their defense plays like that, you know?
exactly yeah. So
Brennan or anybody else got anything on this one?
Nope.
nope.
Okay. Let's go to Ohio State, Penn State. We were talking a little bit before the pod started, specifically about Penn State not starting or Drew Aller being a game time decision. Okay. That's a big deal, mainly because we don't really know much about the backup. I know he did pretty well last week. You know, he went like 9 for 13, 90 something yards, which is pretty decent. Their run game really exploded once he came in. Brennan made that point. I just probably, I don't think this Penn State team is elite. I think they're a top 15 team. I do not think they're a top 5 team.
Yeah.
So that's where my head is on this team, and it's going to stay there. Honestly, I don't think you're going to be able to persuade me a different way, even if they come out with a win in this game. I really don't think they're that elite. So if Ohio State botches this one, I'll think a little bit less of them, especially with how they played last week against Nebraska. They probably should have gotten beat as well.
Yeah.
Last week. So Ohio State also not really impressing me with that roster that they bought for $12 million or $20 million. Whatever they did, it's not really doing it for me. Don't even think it's doing it for the boosters. I think they're pissed as well. So we'll see how they play. I think Will Howard's still a bitch. Y'all go ahead.
Dude, I don't know what kind of crack these AP voters are smoking because I mean, this kind of just clicked in my head. But the fact that you have Texas A&M at number 10 and Penn State at number 3 is just outlandish. I mean, Penn State's
That's a
schedule
real AP poll.
has been weak, and I mean, yeah, I have no idea where they're getting this shit from, but
Is this a
yeah,
whiteout game?
It is. It's a mid. I think no, it's not a white. It's a midday game, which is a fucking crime against humanity.
Yeah,
yeah,
but they white out like
Yeah, well, if
against
they white out midday, but
these
still,
middays sometimes.
it's
yeah, it could
disgusting.
be.
It should be a night game.
Well, they only are allowed like it's crazy. They only are allowed like a whiteout game like once a year or something.
Yeah.
Or something like that because someone else has claimed whiteout games. And I think it's like an NFL team or something. Like for real, I think they have there's like a rule. They sign some kind of contract. They can't do it more than once, and they can't actually call it a whiteout game more than once.
That's so stupid.
Which is dumb as shit
It's
that they even
horrendous.
got into that. But my
That's
whole
almost
point
as
of
bad as it being a midday game.
exactly, I think it's worse. Dude, honestly, there's a lot of things to say about this game, but
Yeah.
truthfully,
I
mean, I definitely know more about, obviously the whole backup quarterback situation with Penn State, Bo Pribula, however you say his last name. That'll be interesting to see if he plays. But
that's
yeah,
where I'm
I think
confused
I think
on.
most concerns are on Ohio State's side of the ball. Obviously, they had some offensive line injuries. They had another one. I think their backup left tackle went down this past week. So they were shifting guys around. I mean,
Just move a guard over there. Move your
yeah,
starting guard over there and put some backup
yeah.
guard in at like the guard position so you're not
Yeah.
playing your third string fucking tackle.
Yeah, their run game looked atrocious last week. So, and like you said, I don't think Will Howard is that great. So without a good run game, I don't think he's one of those quarterbacks that's just going to win you a football game by throwing the ball around.
yeah, and that's the
Um,
question. Like,
Yeah.
can they get a run game
Like,
going?
how's Penn State's defense going to do it against
Yeah,
him?
and
yeah, exactly.
But
And I
dude, if
was
you can get pressure, if you're on your third string left tackle or even a second string guard or whatever, that opens a hole, right? Like
yeah.
now there's a hole potentially in your offensive line that you have to
Mhm.
account for. So now we have to put a tight end over there, or we have to, switch my running back to the left side and let him chip. There's a lot of, then the right side's going to be open. So like this opens up a lot of shit for Penn State to come in there and dominate defensively, but can they do that?
Yeah.
And then can Penn State's offense even score with
Yeah.
Ohio State? Because we know Ohio State can actually score. They're not, their offense isn't dead, but I still don't think Will Howard's that great. I don't think that Drew Aller's even that good. But
Ohio
when it
State's
comes
defensive
down to
line
it,
has looked pretty vulnerable though. So if you get
Yeah.
Singleton going,
that's what I'm saying. If their
I-
run game can get rolling, that's the only thing I really think I can save them in this game and help them win. Dude, they could go up 14 to fucking zip on this team and never look back
yeah.
if their run game's rolling.
Mhm.
And their defensive line is dominating Ohio State's offensive line. I think that Nebraska had chances to win that game. And I do think the refs really fucked them in some places, which I hate that some games this year have been like decided by refs. It's really just been it sucks because like I hate, even if you're the better team or you're the inferior team, but you're winning. It's like you should not lose this game because a ref has a decision that causes you to
Yeah.
lose. Almost happened to Georgia. So I don't like how, everyone's been or the refs have been, calling games this year. It is Big Ten officials though. So maybe they're better
Yeah.
than the SEC this year. But I don't know. That I think the standpoint on this one is I have no bet either way. I would not bet on this game because you really don't know what team's going to show up for either.
Yeah. If I had any bet, I would either look at like the under total or maybe like a halftime, like first half under, just because I think both of these teams will
Come out the
come
gate
out,
kind of
yeah,
sluggish.
pretty slow. Like, defense is playing better, offense is just slow. They're trying to figure each other out. I could see that being a good play. But yeah, I mean, in terms of who's going to win the game, I have no idea. I mean, Ohio State's got to get the ball to their outside playmakers. Like, and I was listening to Joe Klatt's show the other day, and he was saying that in that awful rushing game they just had against Nebraska, they only got the ball to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka a total of, I think, 8 times or maybe even 4 times. I think they both had, yeah, maybe both had 4 catches, and it's like, and two of
Not gonna win a
Jeremiah.
game like
He
that.
only had Jeremiah Smith only had 2 in the second half, and they were both on the very first drive of the second half. He didn't touch the ball for the rest of the game in a tight game. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, an athlete like that, you got to in a close game, you got to be getting him the ball. And same with Emeka Egbuka. So I think they got to figure out ways to get, if their run game's not working, they got to figure out ways to get those guys the ball, or else they're not winning this game.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So let's go to. I don't really have a third game. I do want to just touch this for a second, and then we can go to our next segment. Duke and Miami. Only reason why I'm bringing this up is because SMU beat Duke last week in overtime. And Duke has looked pretty decent this year. So, I mean, they're 6-2. Miami's 8-0, but Miami's also struggled against some inferior teams this year, especially some teams that are not as good as Duke. So, I really am expecting Duke to at least put up a fight in this one. The spread's 20. I think that's a lot. But I wouldn't bet on this game just because I really don't know that much about Duke. I just know they've played some really they've played some decent teams and they've played them pretty well.
Mhm.
And then Miami's just struggled against some inferior teams. So that's my analysis on that one. But Brennan, we can go to that next segment if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, we just wanted to kind of, because things are getting hot in every conference. There's, I mean, at least 4 teams in each conference that still have a shot at making their conference championships. So we just kind of wanted to throw those names out and discuss as a group, kind of see where everybody's at. So we'll start in our favorite conference, obviously, the SEC. So we have A&M at the top of the board at 5-0. Then we have Georgia 4-1, Texas 3-1, Tennessee 3-1, and LSU 3-1. Who do you guys see in the SEC championship this year?
I honestly hope that Georgia doesn't make the SEC championship. I would prefer not to have to
Be
play
an
that
easier
game.
path. Yeah.
And then, if we're like, let's say, because this could also happen, right? Georgia could be like number 2 in the nation
Yeah.
and not play in the SEC championship. and then still get ranked 5.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
y'all are locked in on it right now. Y'all are
But that's
2.
what if y'all went out, so you I think you'd have to lose another game to not make the SEC championship.
Yeah. Y'all are locked in at 2 right now.
Yeah.
So y'all are basically, y'all are pretty much, if you went out playing for the SEC championship against maybe Texas A&M, the winner of that game, if they went out, I think, honestly, I could see 3 or 4 SEC teams getting in. Losing
yeah,
the
I can
SEC
too.
championship,
I
you're
think
still in.
Texas A&M, if they lose one game, later in the season to
Yeah.
like Texas, I think they get in for sure. Texas could get in for sure with just the one loss to Georgia. And then Georgia, I think, could get in with a win against Texas and winning out the rest of the SEC. Because I don't think Alabama's really in play anymore for that tiebreaker to happen. For the SEC championship. So we're looking at about, in my opinion, we're looking at 3 teams that I think could be locks, depending on how the rest of the season goes, with Texas A&M, Georgia, and Texas. And then there's a potential 4th team kind of floating around, depending on what Tennessee does the rest of the year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, but if the only way those 3 teams would be locks is if Texas did beat A&M to end the season, then you'd have because then you'd have, gosh, I don't even know who would make it to the SEC championship then. I think it'd still be, I don't
think
know
it's
how that'd
A&M.
work.
Bunch of tiebreakers.
I don't know how it'd work because you'd have Texas would have the head to head over A&M, but Georgia would have the head to head over Texas. I guess it'd be Georgia,
Well, so
Texas.
Texas
Yeah.
and Georgia,
It'd be
yeah.
Georgia, Texas. They both get one loss. But yeah, so and then
I mean, you still have like the SEC, you still have a bunch of 2-loss teams right now floating around, right? Like that are
Yeah.
all still hot. You got like LSU still in the conversation. I mean, if they win out, they're still in the conversation.
yeah,
They only have one SEC loss, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
they
mean,
could go. I mean, depending on what happens with Georgia, Georgia could lose to fucking Ole Miss and Tennessee. You don't know,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Texas A&M could drop one and then lose to Texas, and then it would be Texas and fucking Tennessee, or Texas and
Well, and then you still got LSU down
someone
there.
team like
If
LSU. I mean,
if LSU wins
Texas and
out, they're a
LSU.
one loss team as well. So
I
they
mean,
still
So
have
I mean,
got-
there's a lot of things that could happen. We are doing this a little early, so it is fun to just kind of talk about this kind of stuff and get some opinions on it. But truthfully, it's just floating right now, man. You really don't know what's going to happen. I think the ACC is still up in the air as well.
Yeah.
Depending on how Miami plays the rest of the season, I mean, I'll let you go with that, Brennan. Go ahead and talk to the ACC.
So right now, ACC still got 4 undefeated conference records. You got Clemson at the top, Miami, SMU, and Pitt. Then you have Virginia Tech still floating in there at 3-1.
SMU and Pitt play today or play tomorrow.
SMU and Pitt play Saturday.
Saturday.
SMU and Pitt play Saturday, so one of them will be kind of knocked out. And then Clemson also still has Pitt and Virginia Tech to play. Miami, easiest
Not
schedule.
scared
I looked at
either
their
of those
schedule.
teams for Clemson. I think it's gonna be Clemson and Miami.
I could see, I'm not gonna lie to you, I could see Miami getting knocked out of the college football playoff if they lose one game because their schedule is that bad and they've hardly won their last.
If they go to the ACC championship and they lose, I don't think they're getting knocked out. But if they go to if they go to
no, if they go
lose a game,
undefeated, I think if they go undefeated and they lose the ACC championship, they're fine. But I think if they lose a game in the regular season and then lose in the conference championship, which I know sounds shitty because I do want to defend. Like, I think obviously unless you're a 3-loss team already and then you like lose your 4th game, but if you lose your 2nd game after like being in the conference championship, I think it should almost be like an automatic lock. I say that, but then you have teams like Miami who's
but I think it should only matter for some
anything.
teams. Like it should matter for some teams. Like
exactly
strength of schedule. Like you shouldn't value it, but that's where you run into trouble is what are you valuing, right?
Exactly.
And like and what's the scale? It can't be a running scale, which is the problem, right? Like Georgia plays a very hard schedule. Okay. We lose in the SEC championship. Now we have 2 losses, and some people might say Georgia shouldn't get in. Now I disagree with that. I know you guys do as well. But then there comes to a thing where you have Miami where they lose one regular season and then they lose in the ACC championship game. Should they not be in? And is it because of their schedule? And then you have to look at, okay, but then you have this team that's in and they're in because they didn't have to play in the ACC championship or the SEC championship.
Well,
and that's where you have a problem.
About to mention, here's a nightmare scenario that the ACC could actually do. What if Clemson, Miami, SMU all go undefeated in conference play? who plays for the ACC championship. Then say
Because neither
you
of them
have
play each other, right? They never play each
none of
other.
them play each other. So
Nope.
then you have Clemson, Miami in the ACC championship. Say Clemson wins that game. So Miami's now a one-loss team. Clemson's a one-loss team. Then
And
you have
SMU is still
SMU,
one loss
one-loss
team.
team. So what do you do? What do you do with that information?
I think you put all three of them in.
Yeah, but then you got to take
I
away
think you
from
put all three of them in, and you take a one-loss like SEC team that didn't play in the SEC championship out, which sucks. But I think you
A
have
one
to.
loss over
two
SMU?
loss. Yeah,
Oh,
that'd be
two loss.
two.
If
You make a
Yeah.
SMU's
two-loss team?
undefeated, if
No,
SMU's
SMU
undefeated,
has one loss already. They have
Yeah,
one
they
loss
do have
already.
one
Oh,
loss.
I forgot. Okay,
they're
okay.
undefeated in conference, but yeah,
Never
they
mind.
still have
That
one
that
loss in the season.
that's different. That's different. That's
They have
different. I was saying,
one loss to a top 10 team, BYU.
damn,
So
and their loss is fucking good. Like it's like
Yeah.
Boise State losing to fucking Oregon if they go undefeated.
Exactly. Like, what
It's
do you
like-
do? What do you
it's like,
do with
what do
this
you do?
information?
Yeah.
Like, you have to throw 3 ACC teams in there at that point, which is
Yeah.
wild to think, right?
I think a two-loss
Yeah.
SEC team could go in, or Big Ten, depending on if that happens in the ACC.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
like,
I
that's where your
for
problem
example,
like comes in.
I would take if Texas A&M handles business for the rest of the season. If you had a one loss SMU and you had a 2-loss A&M, Texas A&M only losses being first game of the season against Notre Dame and then last game of the season against Texas, I would take that 2-loss Texas A&M team over that SMU team. A 1-loss SMU team.
Yeah, then you're going to run into the
Yeah.
same thing you ran into with FSU last year. Like, we
Well,
did what we
yeah.
were supposed to do. What else
I
could
mean,
they do?
no, they didn't beat BYU.
Yep. So with the Big 12,
Yep.
who are we looking at for that?
Big 12, we got BYU sitting at 5-0. Rest of their schedule is cupcake after cupcake. We got Iowa State at 4-0, Kansas State at 4-1, Colorado at 4-1. Those are the 4 teams still in it. We got Iowa State and Kansas State play in the last game of the season. So basically, both of those teams went out the rest of their games. Winner of that game will go to the conference championship. I just feel like BYU is practically already in it. I mean, obviously they're not this crazy spectacular team that just we know is not going to lose a game, but I'll list out
God,
their
and BYU's gonna get the fucking 4 seed.
I'll list out their
Like, that's
schedule for
crazy.
you. Like BYU's final games are Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston.
Utah,
The only
maybe.
team. Yeah, but Utah is awful. I mean, they're 4-4. They're 1-4 in the conference. So I mean, unless Cam Rising comes back, I don't even know what's going on with him. Unless he comes back and
45-year-old.
his
He's
fucking
having
hand or something.
like
back problems
I mean,
when he gets out
Straight
of
up, he
Kansas-
could play again next year, which is even crazier.
I mean, Kansas is
Get him out.
2-6. I don't think BYU is losing to them. I mean, the only game I would say could be like BYU could drop one is on the road at Arizona State. Like I could see maybe that game being good and maybe beat BYU.
Because
possibly
Arizona
lose.
State's running back's nasty.
Yeah, Arizona State's a decent little team, and they're 5-2 on the season. But yeah, outside of that, man, I just don't see really BYU struggling to win the rest of those games.
Are we agreeing on our pick for the 12th team is Boise State as of right
Yeah,
now?
for sure?
Yeah, as of right
For
now,
sure.
it's Boise State. They
Just
just
because I
locked, they
think their
locked
only
it up
loss,
with that
their only
UNLV.
I mean,
loss
unless-
is to Oregon, and it was by 3.
Only
Um,
only team that could hop them would be if Army beats Notre Dame and goes undefeated. That'd be
Yeah,
the only
okay.
way Boise State doesn't
Then
make
Boise State gets left out. That feels
it. Yeah,
oh
That
man.
sucks.
and only
That
loss
sucks.
being a 3
No,
point
they could
loss to
still get
Oregon.
in though. They could
Yeah.
still get in. They don't have
Well-
you. Can't, your only avenue is not only being a group of 5 team. There's not only one
At-large
group of 5
team.
team that's
Well,
going to
yeah,
get
I
in.
guess. I mean, I
You
guess
could
if
get
you
in at like the 11th or 10th.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't
if
see
your
that
team's well, why? Why if they go undefeated and they're beating the shit out of everybody, and they're not the 12th team because they think that our Army has an undefeated schedule. They beat Notre Dame. They beat their
Yeah.
hardest opponent,
Yeah.
and Boise State only lost by 3. They could get in as the 10th or 11th
Yeah, you
seed.
can't leave Boise State out. Then
can't leave them out.
Yeah,
No.
you can. That's like
They're
No,
not. I can promise you, Brennan.
get out of
Dude.
here
I
with
can
that
pro-
fucking.
promise you they're not
Big
leaving.
Ten
They're not leaving the
SEC
Heisman
bias.
front runner out. I can
Yeah.
promise you
Yeah.
they're not leaving the Heisman
No
front
way.
runner out.
That it won't even be close. They're gonna leave them out. they're
I'm
not gonna
crazy.
rank. They're not gonna rank Boise
Brennan,
State
yours.
top.
Where's
11.
Brennan right now? Where they at right now?
What 15, 16?
Okay. They
And
ain't
they
fucking
lost
far.
to number
15.
1 or 2.
They lost to
Yeah,
number
but-
1.
But I mean, they
Your
don't
only
play
loss is the
anybody.
number 1. You're not getting fucking left out. I don't give a shit.
By
And
3.
you lost by 3.
No, I mean, tell that at that point it's going to be way too political. There, they literally cannot put that team in.
Why not? They have the Heisman frontrunner. College football playoff is going to throw him
'Cause
in
you're
your
gonna
face,
have-
and they're going to
you're gonna have
fucking 7
fucking-
commercials about
You're
him.
gonna have rednecks from Alabama banging a drum saying we should get in playoffs.
No,
and
man,
they're gonna
no,
throw
no.
Alabama in playoffs over Boise State. I already tell you how this is gonna go.
Well, that's a problem when you're in a tougher conference and you lose games. You're shit out of luck, kind of. Boise State, I don't see a reason why they can't get in. Unless they're taking a spot that Georgia can get in, then fuck them, you know?
I mean, yeah.
Chaos scenario. What if Iowa State and Kansas State drops 1, Iowa State drops 2, Colorado versus BYU? I would like to see that match.
That'd be fun.
Colorado
is looking decent lately,
That'd
which
help
I'm
out.
impressed.
I've
That'd
come
help out
around.
some SEC teams.
I did not like. Yeah, that would help out SEC.
Because that's the thing is the reason SEC teams might get skimmed on this playoff is because these freaking Big 12 teams are doing way better than people thought they were. And
They
then
thought they were
obviously,
going to get. They thought every team was just going to have like 1 or 2 losses already.
yeah, and then you got Indiana in the Big 10 sitting at freaking 8-0. So it's like, what are we going to do with them when they only lose
let's go to
one
the
game
Big 10
down?
then.
Yeah.
All right, so let's put the top 3 in from the SEC, the top 3 in from the Big 10, the top 2 in from the Big 12. Okay, so 3, 6, 3, 6, 8. Okay,
top 2
now,
from the ACC,
and now you got the top 2 from the ACC. It's 10.
We could do
10,
chaos.
and then you got the
Boise
12.
State and BYU, buddy.
So
or Boise State and not BYU, Boise State and
Army.
Okay.
Yeah,
7
But then it comes down. The last 2 spots seems like it comes down to strength of schedule. Really, like, I mean,
yeah.
What I just said, would that not be fun?
That would be
fun.
crazy, but
that'd be fun.
No shot.
That would be fun.
There's no shot they're leaving out. Like, say Ohio State wins out and beats Indiana. So then you could say you have Indiana as a 1-loss team, Penn State as a 1-loss team, Ohio State and Oregon playing in the conference championship. I think all 4 of those teams go. Like, especially Indiana would make it over. Indiana would make it over a Boise State team.
I don't agree.
Agree. Ohio State.
If they're only lost to Ohio State, but Ohio State blows them out, and Boise State lost by 3 to the number 1 team in the nation, you're out of your fuck if you think that they're not getting in. You really are.
No,
the only team that, let's say Indiana loses to Ohio State and it's a fucking 30-point swing. You think they're getting in over a team that lost by 3 to the number 1 team in the nation that also beat Ohio State, who beat Indiana?
I mean, it's really all going to depend on where all of these teams are ranked. Because I promise you, I think these rankings on, what is it, Monday they're coming out, the playoff rankings. I think they're going to differ from the AP poll fairly, like a good bit.
I think Georgia is going to be higher than where they are.
Georgia will be higher. Some people will be lower. Like, because I think they're going to actually factor in strength of schedule stuff. Like Penn State, I don't think Penn State will be number 3. I mean, I guess they'll have that game against Ohio State this weekend. So if they win, they'll be up there. But like if Penn State loses to Ohio State, I could see them being like 10 or 11 maybe.
That's a chaos scenario.
That's a crazy drop, but I get it.
But yeah, AP has. I mean, like you said, like you look at Penn State's schedule, dude, it's weak as hell. Like, and if like
but if you look at the Big
so
10,
is Indiana's though, right? Like
but also
like you're looking at teams that don't really have tough fucking schedules.
Indiana's
but they're beating the shit out of teams.
Everybody. Penn
State's I know. I agree with
4 close games all year.
Yeah,
so it's like
and then Miami's had a bunch of close games too. That's what sucks. Is like you put a Miami in. They've had a bunch of close games against fucking teams that are not even close to getting.
I mean, you look 2 of Miami wins really should have been losses. You're like, dude, how is this team undefeated still?
Right. Yeah. No, they should be 6-2, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Be 2-2 in fucking ACC play.
Yeah.
But so I think that kind of wraps us up for the college football playoff kind of portion. Just discussing that a little bit. Next week will be really fun. We'll do the segment every week.
Yeah.
At least touch on it. We might not do it very long every week, but we're at least going to touch it every week because the rankings are going to come out next week. So that'll be fun for us to kind of discuss on the next day after that.
It's going to be absolute chaos.
It's going to start getting it's start going to get kind of crazy because Georgia still has to play Ole Miss. They still have to play Tennessee. There's teams that still have to play pretty good teams to see where they're going to be and stuff like that. So I think it's really going to be fun. The SEC is going to be chaotic because there's just so many loss potentials in that. So I'm really excited to see it, but and I'm excited to do this every week because I really think the college football, this is like the best part of the year when we get to November and we can start discussing who's going to be in the playoff now. And now it's 12 team. It's the first year we have this. We discussed it last year. We're also going to bring that up next week, guys. Whenever we talk about the college football playoff, we're going to see exactly how far we were off from
Yeah,
from
we
the
still have our
Well,
ranking.
from the
I
college
could
football playoff.
I could tell you
We did our
one.
ranking last
I
year.
could tell you one that was really off. Oklahoma
Michigan?
State. Oklahoma
Did we say
State.
Michigan?
Yeah,
Damn, we
no,
put Oklahoma
I think
State
we
at the-
left we left Michigan out. I think we left
Dude,
Michigan
because
out.
I think we talked about Michigan not being that great.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
had
this
too
year.
we
much
did.
faith. We had a
I
lot of
think we're
faith in
spot
the
on
mullet
Michigan.
last year. We had a lot
I
of
Yeah.
think
faith
we
in
were
the
we
mullet,
were
faith
we
in the
were
mullet.
ahead of the curve on that though. Like not a lot of people
Yeah.
agreed with us with that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think we got
But
it
yeah,
right.
so we got that next week, guys, and other than that, we'll talk a little bit about some of those games and some of the upcoming ones. We're getting down to the nitty gritty, but thanks for sitting with us and watching. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.